Sex sells just about everything. But what happens when it's innocent people for sale? Sex trafficking is a growing problem, so what can the church do to stop it? Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Sex trafficking.
Welcome to another episode of The Big E, the Elephant in the Room. My name is Melissa. Today we will be talking about sex trafficking, how the church can help. This is a very serious issue that has really trampled through our nation. And we thought at The Big E, the Elephant in the Room, we thought we should be able to tackle this issue, tackle what is going on, and find ways that we can be able to be a voice and be a vessel to others. So today we have a wonderful guest, Christina Sanford. She is truly a wonderful voice that can really bring some emphasis to this topic. And we are so grateful to have her on this episode. Thank you, Christina.
It's my pleasure, Melissa. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I just want to just tap into something and just give everyone a little statistic about sex trafficking. Did you know the top 5 states that is the highest top states that are brewing with sex trafficking today is Florida, Georgia, Ohio, Delaware, and California. So this is a very serious issue that some of you states that you're living in, and this is really going on in the states that we think we would never know that's going on, but it's seriously happening in some very critical areas in possibly some of the states that you're living in. So Christina, what is sex trafficking? And is sex trafficking different from human trafficking?
That's a great question, Melissa. Sex trafficking is the act of coercing an individual into sex acts for the purpose of gaining money or collateral. And is it different from human trafficking? In some ways, yes. Human trafficking is the overarching crime. And there are many types of human trafficking. There's labor trafficking, many different types of trafficking, but sex trafficking falls under the umbrella of human trafficking.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel, especially now, where do you really see a possible risk of someone becoming a victim of sex trafficking?
You know, it used to be that girls and young women, but I'm going to speak specifically to domestic minor sex trafficking survivors because that's who I've worked with. I've worked with some women as well, but in terms of the risk, there really is no specific list that you can go by to determine the risk that is involved in a person being lured into sex trafficking. It used to be that we thought, oh, the indigent population, the vulnerable, the hungry, the people whose parents aren't paying attention, and while all of that may be inclusive of the people that we see who have been lured into sex trafficking, it is not an exhaustive sort of indicator of how someone may be lured into sex trafficking. The average age for a girl to be lured into sex trafficking is age 13, and that age is getting lower and lower as we continue to do studies on this. And what I do see over the course of my career and working with sex trafficking survivors is that there is a fundamental element that is there, and that element is there is an emotional void that the young woman or girl is experiencing. There are no socioeconomic demographics that characterize a sex trafficking victim. When you look at the profile of a sex trafficking victim, you're going to see people from all socioeconomic backgrounds. One thing that you will see, however, in terms of them having similar characteristics is that they describe some sort of emotional void, whether that's from the home or their social network, whatever that is, that there is something that they're looking for. There's something that is missing in their lives, emotionally, socially, psychologically.
Mhm.
And that's really sort of the golden thread that weaves its way through the sex trafficking population, or those who are lured into that crime.
So I know today, especially, a lot of young people are into social media. They're doing a lot of gaming. They're doing a lot of just different things through various social media platforms. Do you feel that this is another way to lure in not just young women, but possibly young men into becoming a victim?
Absolutely. I mean, as social media becomes more and more mainstream over the years, it is a primary means by which traffickers recruit. And so the people that are in these groups, or get the young people who are in these groups or gaming platforms, or that's where the traffickers hang out, because
Mhm.
they know that if they're playing this game, I can start a conversation with them. I can ask them about what school they go to. I can ask them the things they like. We can become friends,
Mhm.
proverbially, on this social media platform. And when they do that, they are gaining the trust of that young person, whether it be a young girl or a young adult.
Mhm.
They know how to groom their victim so that, again, that foundational trust is built, albeit pseudo trust, but the victim doesn't know that.
Mhm.
And then they move forward with starting that relationship where they're beginning to control and
Mhm.
manipulate.
Mhm.
And yes, boys are susceptible as well, not as much as girls, but they do it. Sex trafficking victims uh, are from every gender. So
Mhm. So now I'm going to also kind of tap into, do you feel that they target, um, you're saying just girls and boys, but throughout social media, you hear even individuals part of that have went into part of the LGBT community. They try to even trap them and target them into sex trafficking. Do you see that rising
oh,
over the years
absolutely,
as
it's
well?
rising. Of course, yes, it's definitely rising. And again, when you look at the foundational element there, which is some sort of need for acceptance, for love, for something more, and
Mhm.
you look at the LGBTQIA community, and especially the young people in that community, teenagers who are just discovering, um, some of them are coming out or contemplating coming out, in terms of their sexual orientation. That is a critical time for youth when they
Mhm.
are discovering that, hey, I think I might be gay, or I think I might be part of this community. They are desiring acceptance and approval. And so that places them in a vulnerable space, which
Mhm.
then puts them on the list for the
Okay.
traffickers to reach out to, because they know that, okay, this young person is struggling with perhaps coming out or accepting their sexuality or whatever that might be.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
So
so,
so do you feel that there's specific signs that individuals they have that they lure these young people in? Are there signs that you can really maybe provide that can detect them to know how they're being lured in to possibly become a victim?
whenever you see an adult that's reaching out to a child, and a child is a person from 0 to 18, and that adult is reaching out to a child, that's a sign right there.
Mhm.
Why are you reaching out to me? I'm a
Mhm.
child,
Mhm.
right? That's the number one thing. Secondly, asking personal questions, um, behaving as though, or saying things that make the victim or the potential victim believe that they are special, they are different, they're so beautiful and they're so amazing. They start hearing these things, and the trafficker or the recruiter knows how to do that so that they can lure the person in and really get them to feel some sort of connection with them.
Mhm,
But in terms of other signs, you see traffickers hanging out at high school after school.
mhm,
That's a sign. Um, having you to, this is how it works initially. Initially, the girl may be, I'm just saying girl because most of the trafficking victims are female. She may be talking on the phone to her friend, the adult friend, and sharing with the friend that, oh, I'm having problems with my mom. She won't let me do anything. I don't have any freedom. The trafficker will initially be like, no, you need to do what your mom says. I mean, just be, do what she says, be good, go to school, do your homework. Yeah. And once the trafficker recognizes that that victim trusts him
mhm,
or her, because there are female recruiters as well, then it'll start moving into, yeah, I think you're right. You really are mature. I mean, you don't really need to listen to your mom. I mean, you could just come stay with me.
mhm,
I mean, why don't you come stay with me? I mean, I'm not going to put all those restrictions on you.
mhm,
I
mhm,
live right over here. I can drop you off at school every day if you need me to.
mhm, mhm,
So over time, that trust is built and then it starts going in the other direction. Once
mhm,
once the trafficker recognizes we've gotten to the critical impasse here, where I know she trusts me, she tells me everything, she's crying on the phone with me, telling me how, horrible her life is with her parents who are restrictive or don't treat her right or whatever's going wrong in her life. Once we get to a certain point, then the trafficker or the recruiter flips the script and
mhm.
it becomes something different.
Wow.
That is the point at which the victim has to make a decision. Do I go with him or her, or do I stay in this life that I've been communicating that I'm miserable in?
Mhm, mhm. So I know you were saying high school, um,
Middle.
specifically that they're kind of maybe luring into the high school. Is there an age that you can see that they really start off with or gravitate to more of an age, specifically like an age, or does it really matter of the age?
It doesn't really matter the age. If again, that average age is 13, that's the average age that girls are lured into trafficking. Um, Depending on the physical representation that the girl brings to the table, whether it's, oh, she's 13, but she's well developed, she looks like a grown woman, then
Mhm,
she's a commodity. She's also a commodity if she's 13 and has no physical indicators of womanhood. Her breasts haven't begun to grow. She's not filling out. That's also a commodity because we have pedophiles who, Johns is what they call them. Johns, the ones who purchase the service or the solicitation call, they respond to solicitation calls. They may like childlike, you know, with young girls.
mhm, mhm,
And
mhm,
so it's a full range. And that is why human trafficking is a multi-billion dollar business, because the commodity that you're exchanging can be used multiple times on any given night between
mhm,
so many hours. So imagine if, you're selling a product or you're doing a service and that's one service. But with trafficking, that young girl may be forced to turn 15 tricks on one night.
wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, this is such an informative information, and Christina, we truly are thankful for you to be here to really bring some enlightenment about what is going on in our nation dealing with sex trafficking. But we are going to go to a commercial break, and we will be right back.
We know that God has called you to a mission, but sometimes you need a little help getting there. At the Center for Clergy and Church Support, we strive to encourage, empower, and equip ministries and nonprofit organizations to do all that God has called them to do. We handle basic legal issues, conduct administrative and financial audits, and strengthen organizations in community engagement and capacity building. Let us help your ministry or nonprofit in advancing the kingdom of God. Visit clergycenter.org for more.
I just want to ask you, Christina, do victims self-identify as a victim?
Oh, Melissa, usually not. And that's why the helping profession struggles with this population, because they don't recognize that they're in bondage to someone else. Many times the trafficker or the recruiter, depending on, usually there's a middle person involved, which is the recruiter, and then there's the trafficker, but there's a relationship that's built there. The victim believes that that person is her loving boyfriend who wants to take care of her, wants to love on her, wants to make sure she's safe. And there's a traumatic bond that is built between the victim and the trafficker. So when girls, especially minor girls, are being taken from the streets or brought out of the sex trafficking trade, or rescued, as people say, they don't want to be rescued, a lot of them, because they really are very much attached to their trafficker, and they have become attached to the lifestyle that they've been living. And so no, typically they do not identify as victims. In fact, we don't even want to call them victims. When I work with sex trafficking, I call them sex trafficking survivors, because they have survived trauma. They have survived, in many cases, complex trauma, which is one of the most difficult traumas to overcome. And so to identify them as a victim is to put them further in a place of powerlessness, in a place of helplessness, to characterize them as helpless and powerless. And that's the last thing they want. That's the last thing they want. Now, when they do finally come out and they exit the sex trade, they come out of the game, as they say, and a lot of them come out and they want to advocate for other girls and women to come out of the game, then they will identify themselves as a previous victim. But for the most part, they identify as survivors.
So do you really understand why there is such a high percentage of sex trafficking in the United States as well as internationally?
Well, what I'm going to say is probably not going to be popular, but in America specifically, this nation was founded on greed, and it was founded on the principles of free labor in order to obtain wealth. And so the sex trafficking trade did not start with someone saying, oh, let's use women, let's use their bodies and make money. It started way before then. It's a systemic issue that began at the inception of this nation, at the founding of this nation. And that's why it's such a challenging it's a challenging issue to address, because at its foundation is greed, capitalism that has been perverted, and also the objectification of women. So when we look at all of those three pieces and how they're interwoven, it's very difficult to unweave that and dismantle the system, because the sex trafficking system, is built on the foundation of this nation.
So once someone is lured into sex trafficking, is it easy for that young person to be able to get out of that lifestyle? Or is it, once they're really lured into it, they're kind of basically really stuck in to basically live the lifestyle as a sex trafficker?
So there are two answers to that question. Is it logistically easy for the person to get out? Probably, I would say yes. The human trafficking hotline, in most major cities, there's a sex trafficking task force and a police force that specifically deals with rescuing women and apprehending the traffickers. So logistically, is it easy to get out? Probably much easier than emotionally getting out. Again, the victim, the survivor, the young girl, the woman has developed a traumatic bond with this man and also with the other girls in the stable. It's not just her in the home. There are sometimes 10, 15, 20, 30 other girls that are living in a big, beautiful home with this trafficker. And so they develop friendships. While a lot of those friendships are based on the trauma bond, a lot of them are genuine friendships as well, as far as they know, as far as they can identify friendships. And so to pull them away from that and tell them, come on back to life and become a square again, go back and live with your parents again, go find an apartment on your own again, find money by working again, and this is the fallacy that they begin to believe. If a sex trafficking victim or survivor is turning 15 tricks a night at $300 a trick, depending on what, sometimes it's more, that's $4,500 that she's making in one night over the course of 5 hours, 6 hours. And so when I say she's making it, the fallacy is when you say to her, you can like get a job and you can still take care of your little boy. You don't have to do this. She'll be, where am I going to make $4,500 a night? Where am I going to make that? But the reality of that is she's not making it. She's handing it over to her pimp.
Yes.
And if she keeps even a penny, she will get beaten to a pulp. So again, this is the picture. This is the fallacy that she's living in. This is the alternate reality that she's existing in. And so when you ask, is it easy to get out? There is so much complexity around these relational dynamics that we're seeing in the sex trafficking survivor, what she's going through, how she's bonded with certain people, what she believes about herself.
Yeah, so I was going to say that the self-esteem. Does the self-esteem play a big part in this lifestyle too? And thinking that they're better off, or they know if they're more with their parents, the responsibilities that they have to hold compared to living a life that they are under the sex trafficker, like you said, living in a mansion, living lavishing lives, because they're giving them what they need at that moment, but it's not fully fulfillment. It's just what they need just to continue doing what they're doing.
And that's all they get, Melissa. I'm glad you brought that up. They get what is required to subsist. If they don't eat all day and it's 11 o'clock at night, it's not uncommon for the pimp to say, if she says, I'm hungry, I'm not even going to say it out loud because I know this is a Christian show, but he will say, a girl on the street, what does a girl on the street need? She don't need to eat. And fill it in. Okay, fill it in. Doesn't need to eat.
Yeah.
You just need to lay down. That's what you need to do.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is what's happening. She is hungry. She's nutritionally malnourished. She's not well taken care of. She's wearing a lot of wigs and lots of things to mask the depravity that she's living in. And so while she may have jewelry and wigs and certain clothes and all of that, high heel, all the things that go along with the lifestyle, when you strip her down of all of that, she really is bereft of care.
Yes.
She is bereft of care, woefully bereft of care. And so she doesn't realize that though, because she believes that she's being well taken care of.
Yes. And that is truly unfortunate that this is really happening. And I'm glad we're having this conversation, and hopefully we are going to be able to identify and help young women and boys to just know the seriousness of this lifestyle that can possibly happen to them or one of their friends. And also for the parents to bring more awareness, to become more eye openers to identify signs instead of just saying that's not my child. That would never happen to my child. And I think a lot of parents do go into that mindset. That would never happen to me.
Oh yeah, because my child lives in a great house and they go to a great school and we take care of her, and why would she want to go out there and we're lying to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We're lying to ourselves because all children are susceptible to being trafficked, including ours, including the ones who we take to church every week, including the ones who go to Sunday school or Sabbath school. If you're a Sabbath keeper, whatever that is, your child is susceptible. And that is, I think, one of the biggest pieces is that when we plug into the reality of the world and what the world is what the world is bringing us, we have to recognize that the world is not just our sphere and what we've created in our little bubble, but the world is vast and it is diverse with both good and bad intentions.
Yes. So what is your thought about what the church can possibly do more to get involved in protecting or creating a safe place for children or adults that were victims of sex trafficking?
Well, I think it starts with prevention first, before we talk about what can we do for the victims. I think we need to start in the church, talking about sex, talking about relationships, talking about what it looks like to have a healthy relationship, talking about when your needs are not met. What are the things that we do when our needs are not met? We reach out for help. We reach out for something that may not be healthy. We need to be reporting abuse in the church. We need to be talking about these things and developing a no tolerance mindset when it comes to abuse and neglect in the church. It needs to be talked about. We need to have a clear plan as to how to address it, and how to reclaim the lives of those who have experienced abuse or neglect. Remember, we talked about that emotional piece, that foundational piece that leads a person to be lured into this lifestyle. And typically it's an emotional neglect that they're experiencing, nothing physical. Their hair is done, they're clean, they go to school every day, they eat, but they're emotionally neglected. The church doesn't like to talk about that.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you. Why doesn't the church talk about such a critical issue that is basically happening sometimes right outside their church doors?
Right inside.
Or right inside their church doors.
The reason why is because most of the people in many churches are still victims. A victim cannot rescue a victim. A victim cannot protect a victim. A victim cannot speak to the needs of another victim. And so the church's job is to help people to heal from things that have happened to them in their past, so that people don't continue to be victimized and no one does a thing about it because they're not equipped. The church is ill-equipped because the church has, because of their spiritual arrogance, the church has neglected to address the failings of people in the church and the victimization of people, of its parishioners, its congregants. That's why we're walking around with this issue in the church. The church is ill-equipped because we have not been honest with ourselves. And because of the patriarchal system on which the church was built, we naturally protect those who are perpetrators.
Yes.
And because we protect them, then the victims are walking around wounded. And the perpetrator continues to victimize. And guess who's going to save the victimized? Who is really called to save the victimized? It's the other people, but
The
they're
other one.
also wounded and victimized because they
Yeah.
never healed, because nobody ever acknowledged it.
Yeah.
Nobody did anything about it. We have a church full of victims, Melissa.
Wow. It's it's really truly sad. And
Mhm.
I think we have to start that communication. We have to start the communication because, like you said, these are individuals currently in our church that are suffering and dealing with possibly, dealing with possibly being a sex trafficker. And it's just such a really a brewing issue. And I'm hoping that we can really start be able to identify ways that we can start the communication in our church. So we really truly thank you, Christina. And you have one more thing? Yes.
I did want to share this for those who are watching. If you do suspect that someone in your life or even on the street that you see is being trafficked, there is a human trafficking hotline, and that number is 888-373-7888. You do not have to confirm that they are being trafficked. You just have to suspect it. And you call this number, they ask you certain questions, and you can report someone who you believe is being trafficked. They'll ask you specific questions. If you are a young person, whether you're a teen or a young adult, male or female, and you feel like you've been lured into sex trafficking and you really don't know how to get out of this, you can text help to 233-733. Text help to 233-733. That will connect you with the human trafficking hotline, and you will get help in your area. You don't have to try to do this alone. You don't have to live in this forever. You don't have to live in this fog forever, turning tricks every night, multiple times a night. I know you're tired. You're exhausted. Sometimes you have to drug yourself up in order to get through the night. I understand that. I've seen many of my patients and girls that I've helped to come out of the game have to go through that. But you don't have to keep living that way. Text help to 233-733 if you really want to get out of the game.
Well, we thank you truly, Christina, for your insight and your resources that you have provided to our audience and our viewers. We're hoping that we can really be a vessel to someone that needs help and needs assistance. So we thank you again for watching The Big E, the elephant in the room, where we speak about the unspeakable.